Today, we are taking on a case that is just absolutely chilling in its premeditation. It's the sheer audacity of it and the profound level of betrayal at its core.
It really is. We're diving into the calculated death of Stacy Hunsucker. And what immediately stands out is how the perpetrator exploited his professional knowledge. This isn't just a crime, it's a meticulously engineered medical deception.
That's the perfect way to put it, a medical deception. Joshua Hunsucker came disturbingly close to getting away with what you could call the perfect crime. He actually built a pre-existing medical history for his victim.
Yeah, he manufactured it so that her eventual death would seem, completely normal, almost inevitable to everyone on the outside.
That terrifying vulnerability is so central to this story. So let's set the scene a little bit. We're talking about Stacy Hunsucker, a 32-year-old from Mount Holly, North Carolina. And by all accounts, she was a loving mom, a really vibrant person in her community.
Absolutely. She had a degree in paralegal studies, but found her real passion in teaching preschoolers. She worked at the First Methodist preschool.
And she was creative, too. A friend of hers, Shelley O'Day, talked about how Stacy was incredibly talented with crafts. She made these hand-painted wooden signs.
Right, and O'Day mentioned that just a few months before Stacy died, in the summer of 2018, she paid Stacy $50 for a custom welcome sign. It just paints this picture of a busy, active person who was really engaged with her life.
Okay, so now let's talk about the man who entered her life, Joshua Hunsucker. They met at a department store. He was, 6'5"?
Yeah, and she was 5'11". Apparently, the fact that she was so tall is what first caught his attention.
She turned him down a few times at first, but he was extremely persistent. He found out she played softball, showed up at her practice, and actually joined the team just to get close to her.
And it worked. They got married in Myrtle Beach in 2010. They had 2 daughters, Piper and Willow.
And Joshua's job is so critical here. He was a flight paramedic for Atrium Health's MedCenter Air. He'd been in that position since 2013. This is a high-trust, high-status profession.
Oh, absolutely. He was confident, convincing, a former college football player. The image was this successful, professional family man.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really analyze how he exploited that professional medical knowledge, the expertise meant to save lives, to pull off a murder that unfolded over years.
And it was a plot that was only thwarted by really sheer chance and a mother's instinct.
A mother who just refused to accept the official story. Okay, let's unpack this by charting the bizarre and frankly terrifying pattern of health issues that began long, long before Stacy's death.
This is the critical starting point. We have to look at this not as a sudden tragedy, but as a slow, calculated medical assault.
The decline really began almost right after the birth of their first daughter, Piper. This was back in February 2013. Stacy started having these strange, unexplained health problems.
And they weren't minor. We're talking serious, measurable cardiac issues that confounded her doctors.
Right. For a healthy young woman in her 20s, the symptoms were medically baffling. She had unexplained bradycardia, that's an abnormally low heart rate, and just extremely low blood pressure.
Her levels were so low they weren't considered safe. She was seeing specialists, they were running all these diagnostics, but they were confused. There was no family history, no clear cause for why her system was just shutting down.
And it wasn't a one-off thing. It got much, much worse after their second daughter, Willow, was born in November 2014. She was in and out of urgent care.
And then came the really life-altering event. In January 2015, she had a massive heart attack.
Catastrophic. Her heart actually stopped beating shortly after she got to the hospital. She had to be put on a ventilator just to keep her alive while the medical team was desperately trying to figure out what was going on.
The end result of all this mystery was shocking. In February 2015, at less than 30 years old, Stacy had to have a pacemaker implanted.
A pacemaker. A device that was literally necessary to regulate a heart that should have been perfectly healthy.
For a woman that young, with absolutely no pre-existing cardiac conditions. It's a huge anomaly. It screams that something external, something highly damaging was happening.
But the doctors were focused on treating the symptoms, right? They saw severe electrical system failure, and they treated that.
Exactly. And if we look back on it now, this is the first, most crucial stage of Joshua's premeditation. The retrospective analysis, the one done years later, it confirms that all of Stacy's symptoms,
So low blood pressure, the slow heart rate.
all of it, the cardiac events, needing a ventilator, the pacemaker, they're all entirely consistent with slow, repeated poisoning by tetrahydrozoline.
The active chemical in commercial eye drops like Vizine.
That's the one.
So he wasn't just killing her. He was actively building the medical record that would eventually excuse her murder. It's just diabolical.
It is. And this is where his job becomes the perfect cover. As a flight paramedic since 2013, he had deep medical knowledge. He knew exactly what tetrahydrozoline does. It's a potent vasoconstrictor. It slows the heart dramatically. It lowers blood pressure.
So he would have known exactly how to administer doses that wouldn't kill her immediately.
Right. Sublethal doses. Just enough to severely stress and weaken her cardiovascular system over years. He successfully manufactured a pre-existing condition, severe unexplained cardiac disease, so that when she finally did die, it would look perfectly plausible.
A tragic consequence of her quote-unquote inevitable health condition.
And the genius of his plan, for him, was that the normal medical tests they were running in the hospitals would never detect the poison.
He knew that.
He was banking on it. Standard toxicology panels do not screen for tetrahydrozoline. The doctors had no reason to suspect poison. They had a documented cardiac failure they had to focus on.
He was leveraging the blind spots of routine medical testing. And all the while, as Stacy is fighting for her life, the family was drowning in financial stress.
That's another layer to this. The constant hospital stays, the specialist visits, the pacemaker surgery, it created this crushing debt.
They even had a GoFundMe. A friend, Suzanne Steinbrenner, organized it just to help them manage the bills.
The moral calculus there is terrifying. This financial strain, the GoFundMe, it was all happening while Joshua was the one actively causing the disease that led to the debt. He was planning for the insurance payoff that would solve the very problem he was creating.
Incurring massive medical debt to set the stage for a $250,000 insurance payday. It is just so hard to grasp that level of cynical calculation.
And all that planning finally came to a head on September 23, 2018.
This is the night she died. Joshua called 911. He claimed he found his 32-year-old wife unresponsive, just leaning against the side of the couch. And the most immediate, obvious red flag wasn't the death itself, it was his story.
The stories, plural. Inconsistency is the universal language of guilt. A person who genuinely finds their spouse dying tells one story, driven by panic and shock. Joshua offered four distinctly different narratives.
Okay, let's lay them out because they really dismantle any claim of innocence. First, what he told the police at the scene.
Right. To law enforcement, he said he had gone outside to lock their cars. He mentioned there had been some local thefts, so he was just taking precautions. That was his official statement.
Oh, okay. But then he talks to a friend.
And he tells that friend he had actually gone for a short walk outside to get some exercise. Completely different reason for being outside.
Then there's a third person, another friend.
To them, he said he was busy cutting wood in the backyard for those craft signs. The same kind of signs Stacy was known for making.
And the fourth version. This one is the most revealing, I think. What he told his mother-in-law, Susie.
Yes. To Susie Robinson, he said he had been sitting right there in the room the whole time, working on his laptop at the kitchen table, but with his back turned. He claimed that when he finally turned around, he saw Stacy just lazily leaning against the couch.
4 stories for a span of just a few minutes. It just screams that he was actively trying to figure out which fabrication sounded best, which one would cover the time he needed to administer that final lethal dose.
When rescuers arrived, it was too late. Stacy was unresponsive, blue, not breathing. And given her documented history, the pacemaker, the heart failures, local police initially classified it as a sad but non-suspicious cardiac arrest.
The premeditation, built over 5 years, had seemingly paid off.
But his actions immediately after her death were so extreme, so suspicious, that they became the next layer of red flags. The most glaring one was his refusal of an autopsy.
He was adamant about it. He pushed back hard, which is so strange because Stacy was a registered organ donor.
Right, organ donation requires post-mortem procedures, sometimes testing. But Joshua was fighting any kind of medical scrutiny of her body.
And his desperation went even further with the cremation.
The speed of it was frankly shocking. Stacy's body was cremated within 2 days of her death. I mean, think about that.
2 days.
Families usually take weeks to process to plan a funeral. The source material described it as really fast, almost rude. It's like he couldn't wait to eliminate every last piece of physical evidence.
And the psychological detachment. It's incredible. Stacy's parents, John and Susie, they were the ones who had to plan and pay for her burial.
And Joshua was described as just an observer. He was completely uninvolved. The lack of grief was obvious to everyone around him, and it really set the stage for his true motive to become clear.
The financial motive, it wasn't even hidden, it was brazen. In those same 2 days, he was rushing the cremation.
He was filing the life insurance claims for the full $250,000 destroying the evidence and monetizing her death at the exact same moment.
The efficiency is sickening. He was securing the payoff before her body was even ash.
There were two policies, one for $200,000, which paid out in two $100,000 increments, and another for $50,000. And once he had that $250,000, the spending spree started immediately.
The wrongful death suit later itemized it all. First priority. He paid off the family's crushing mortgage debt. $215,380 on their Mount Holly home. Gone.
And then came the toys. He immediately bought a large boat valued somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000.
And the judge in the case later pointed to that boat purchase specifically as a clear sign of ill-gotten gains.
Of course. And not only was he buying luxury goods, he was taking expensive trips with his new girlfriend trips. He and Stacy could never afford because of the medical debt that he created.
He was living the high life, completely unfazed.
The children's caregiver, Julie McDonald, told investigators she never once saw him look sad. She described him as unfazed, very happy. It was like Stacy had just been erased from their lives.
And the space she occupied was immediately filled. He'd been having a very public affair with a coworker, Jennifer Elkins, or Jen.
He was with her even while Stacy was in intensive care fighting for her life. And just 6 months after Stacy's death, Jen moved into the family home.
The same house, the same bedroom where Stacy died.
His coworkers at Med Center Air were shocked. They told investigators his behavior was rude, crazy, and out of line. The feeling was that he was just waiting for Stacy to die so he could cash in and start his new life with his mistress.
And all these details, the quick payout, the boat, the mistress moving in, the years of baffling illness, they all started to add up for one person.
Stacy's mother, Susie Robinson. She saw them not as tragic coincidences, but as huge, obvious red flags.
9 months passed. The local police had closed the case, natural causes. Joshua's perfect crime was holding up.
And then it took one simple, determined act from a mother to bring the whole thing crashing down.
In May 2019, Susie Robinson made the phone call. But she didn't call the police. They had already dismissed it. She called the North Carolina Department of Insurance.
That's the fascinating pivot here. She reported him for theft and suspicious death. She was convinced he killed Stacy for the insurance money and for his lover.
So the insurance commissioner, Mike Causey, he gets this tip. And he immediately sends it straight to the criminal investigation section. This triggers a huge multi-agency effort. The DOI, Gaston County Police, even Homeland Security.
And here is where Joshua's overconfidence, his belief that he destroyed all the evidence, became his downfall.
He overlooked one small procedural requirement.
It was tied to Stacy's kindness. Because she was a registered organ donor, the LifeShare Donor Center had kept a small blood sample for compatibility testing. And crucially, they held on to that sample until she was cremated.
That one small vial of blood.
It was the only piece of physical evidence that Joshua couldn't destroy. It became the single point of failure for his entire 5-year murder plot.
But there was still a huge hurdle. The initial toxicology screens on that blood sample came back clean.
Just as he had planned. No controlled substances, no common poisons. The case was about to hit another dead end.
But the investigators, they just wouldn't let it go.
This is where their critical thinking was so important. They knew they had a medically trained killer with a huge financial motive. They refused to accept the standard clean result. They pushed for more.
They requested specialized, targeted tests, a much wider screening to look for non-routine substances.
Right, substances a medically trained killer would know how to use and, more importantly, how to mask. They specifically had to request screening using advanced chromatography and mass spectrometry. These tests are incredibly expensive, thousands of dollars per sample.
Which is why local police might often skip them.
Exactly. But the insurance department's involvement provided the resources. And the results of that specialized testing, they were explosive. They found tetrahydrozoline.
The active ingredient in eye drops. And the levels weren't just trace amounts.
They were astronomical. Forensic toxicologist Demi Garvin testified that Stacy's blood contained 30 to 40 times the recommended therapeutic level.
30 to 40 times, that's lethal.
Absolutely lethal. And it could only have been achieved through deliberate, repeated, heavy poisoning. This confirmed the long game he'd been playing.
So let's talk about the pharmacology here. The state attorney said tetrahydrozoline causes severe vasoconstriction, which means it constricts blood vessels. What does that do to the heart?
It forces the heart to work much, much harder against enormous resistance. Eventually, it leads to cardiac arrest or profound bradycardia. For Stacy, whose heart was already so damaged and weakened by years of this.
And was being kept going by a pacemaker.
That final massive dose was designed to look like the inevitable failure of an already compromised organ. It was the perfect disguise. He created the target, weakened the defense, and then delivered the final blow that perfectly mimicked the disease he induced.
So when you put it all together, his background, the evidence, it's this perfect storm of knowledge, means, and opportunity.
His medical training was central. He had the knowledge of the drug and its exact effects. He could pick a poison that targeted her heart and masked itself as natural disease.
And he had the means. Eye drops are everywhere. They don't require logging or tracking like a controlled substance, no paper trail.
And finally, the method and opportunity. He had access to her every day. The poison is tasteless. He could put it in her water, anything. He exploited his role as her husband, her caretaker.
And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. It seems Joshua might have accelerated his plan because of something he saw on the news.
Right. Just 2 weeks before Stacy's death, there was a huge local story about a chillingly similar case just 20 miles away, the Lana Sue Clayton case.
Lana Sue Clayton was a nurse in the Charlotte area. She was jailed in August 2018 for killing her husband with poisonous eye drops, with tetrahydrozoline.
The story was all over the local news. A medical professional using an everyday item to commit murder.
She admitted to putting eye drops in her husband's water for 4 days straight until he died. And prosecutors later noted the striking, almost identical similarities.
The pattern is undeniable. Both were in the medical field, both deaths happened at home, both were initially seen as natural, and both used the exact same substance.
The court papers suggest that Joshua saw this news coverage, and it basically confirmed for him that his method worked and was hard to detect.
So he delivered the final lethal doses to Stacy just days after learning about the Clayton case.
So the news didn't give him the idea, he already had that. It just gave him the confidence to finish it.
A plan he'd had for a long time. This is confirmed by his former co-workers at Med Center Air. Detectives interviewed them and uncovered something truly damning.
What was that?
Years before the murder, Joshua had told at least 2 different colleagues that if he ever got the chance, he would use Visine or another eye drop to kill someone.
He was saying it out loud.
They weren't jokes. These were chilling, detailed threats from a medical expert. He was basically testing the concept. It just firmly establishes the link between his professional knowledge and his criminal intent.
Joshua Lee Hunsucker was finally arrested on December 19th, 2019. First-degree murder and felony insurance theft.
A $2 million bond was set, and shockingly, he posted it. He was released on Christmas Eve 2019, just 5 days after his arrest.
The DA later said that allowing him bail was a mistake, given what happened next.
Because while he was out on bail awaiting trial, his primary targets became the 2 people who exposed him. Stacy's parents, John and Susie Robinson.
He started a relentless campaign of harassment.
Oh, it was terrifying. He would drive by their house repeatedly. He followed them in his car. He harassed them at their church, in the parking lot. He would show up at his granddaughter's sports games just to photograph and video John and Susie.
He even mailed them packages demanding they drop the case.
His desperation was escalating, and it started even before the murder arrest. Less than a month before, he was charged with setting fire to medical equipment, a syringe pump on an Atrium Health helicopter over Charlotte.
Forcing an emergency landing.
Exactly. Police believe it was a desperate act to cause chaos because he knew his arrest was coming. And that act cost him his job the day after he was arrested for murder.
But the attacks on the Robinsons, they escalated into something completely delusional in February 2023. He faked his own assault to frame Stacy's father.
It's just wild. He claimed he was attacked changing a flat tire, hit with a pistol, zip-tied, injected with something, and he explicitly blamed John Robinson, Stacy's father, for the kidnapping.
He tried to completely flip the narrative.
Mount Holly police investigated and found 0 proof. They concluded he fabricated the entire thing in a desperate last-ditch effort to shift the blame.
And when that failed, his desperation reached its most sickening point. Shortly after the fake kidnapping, Joshua poisoned his own 11-year-old daughter.
That is nearly impossible to comprehend.
He used the same method, the same chemical. She became extremely sick, she was hospitalized, and tests confirmed tetrahydrozoline in her system.
And not just that, they also found a powerful tranquilizer not meant for children. The same drug authorities had previously found in his truck.
He did this, authorities believe, to make the Robinsons look responsible, to try and paint them as dangerous caregivers and have the girls removed from their custody.
The level of depravity. To poison your own child for a tactical legal advantage is just... it's horrifying.
A judge did rule in July 2024 that Joshua had abused and neglected both his daughters, which gave the Robinsons a strong legal basis in their fight for custody.
And his reign of terror finally ended. He was arrested again in August 2024 for witness intimidation, and his bond was revoked in November 2024. He's in Gaston County Jail now without bail, and his trial is projected for autumn 2025.
This case is just such a disturbing example of calculated murder. He built the perfect cover story over 5 years, successfully manufacturing a tragic medical history to mask his intent. And the focus has to always return to Stacy, a loving mother, a teacher whose life was just extinguished by greed and cruelty.
And the essential lesson here, I think, is about vigilance, about trusting that instinct when the official story feels fundamentally wrong. Joshua would have committed the perfect crime.
He would have gotten away with it, a clean break with $250,000 and a new life.
If not for two things: Susie Robinson's simple, persistent tip to the insurance department, and the pure procedural accident of the LifeShare Donor Center keeping that one single blood sample.
The irony is profound. An investigation into insurance fraud is what provided the crucial link that the police initially missed.
And the family's determination has been the driving force for justice ever since. Their lawyer said they won't stop until justice is done. And John and Susie Robinson are still fighting for permanent custody of Piper and Willow, who are now about 12 and 14.
We have to end by asking you, the listener, to just consider the psychological darkness required for this. A medical professional trained to save lives spends years poisoning his wife. Then he engages in arson, fakes his own kidnapping to frame her parents, and finally resorts to chemically assaulting his own children, all while awaiting trial.
It's a deep dive that shows how truly dark and unpredictable people can be, even the ones we are supposed to trust implicitly with our lives.